Well,
Yeah.
excellent. With that said, let's jump into some of the evidence. You start the
Yeah.
book with the Kalam cosmological argument.
Yes.
Maybe just sum up for what that argument is, and then I've got one or two pushbacks that I often hear on this. I'd love to hear your response to.
Yeah, I interviewed Dr. William Lane Craig, who's the biggest proponent of it. Of course, this is an argument that goes back to medieval Islam originally. But basically, it's very simple. It says that whatever begins to exist has a cause. We know now, virtually every scientist agrees, the universe began to exist. Therefore, the universe must have a cause behind it. Well, what kind of a cause can bring a universe into existence? Well, it must be transcendent since it's separate from the universe. It must be uncaused itself because it had to be the cause behind the universe. It must be spirit or immaterial because it existed before the physical world. It must be eternal or timeless because it existed before physical time was created. It must be powerful given the immensity of the creation event. It must be smart given the precision of the creation event. It must be personal because he had to make the decision to create. Must be caring because he crafted such an incredible habitat for us to flourish in. And the scientific principles of Occam's razor would tell us there'd be just one creator. So we look at those characteristics and we say, those are the qualities that match the description of the God of the Bible. It rules out pantheism because pantheism claims that everything is God, and it can't be if God has to be transcendent and apart from creation. It rules out Eastern beliefs of a cyclical universe because science has now established that that's not practical from a physics standpoint, and there must be a cause and a origin of the universe. And even if we're a tiny part of a multiverse, the theorem developed by Dr. Alexander Vilenkin at Tufts University, famous cosmologist, and two colleagues tells us there would still be a beginning point in the past. So this is, I think, a powerful argument from science. And again, this is only scientific discoveries of the last 50, 60 years. Scientists used to believe for centuries that the universe was eternal. But now the expansion of the universe tells us that it must have had a beginning point at some point in the past. And there's also great philosophical arguments that an eternal past is not possible.
Now, you listed a bunch of attributes that this cause would have. The one that I think, at least in my experience, people push back on most is personal.
Yeah.
And the argument, at least the point that you made, was this cause had to make a decision.
Yeah.
Now, flesh that out a little bit more, why we know this cause had to make a decision and why that would have to be a personal agent to do so.
Yeah, there's only two possibilities. There's either a scientific explanation for the universe coming into existence, or there's a personal explanation. It can't be a scientific explanation because the origin of the universe can't be explained by some prior conditions and natural laws that weren't even in existence. So there must be a personal explanation. Well, the cause of the universe transcends time and space. So it can't be a physical reality. It must be immaterial. Well, there are only two possibilities then. First, it could be an abstract object like numbers. Well, numbers don't bring things into existence. Numbers have no causal power. The other possibility is an unembodied mind, because that can be creative. It can create. And so, and what is God? He is a spirit. He is an unembodied mind. So that's consistent with God. Now, he had to make the decision to create, because if the universe were just a mechanical construct that would occur whenever sufficient conditions were met, and those conditions existed eternally, then the universe would be eternal. But it's not. It's finite in its age. And therefore, there must have been a point in time where some sort of decision was made to create. So a decision of the will by an agent, an unembodied mind that has freedom of the will, I think is the best explanation for the moment at which the universe came into existence.
Okay, so if matter and time comes into existence, then the cause, like you said, has to be timeless and immaterial.
Right.
And you said the two things we can think of are like numbers or the laws of logic or a mind.
Right.
Maybe we're just not thinking enough. Maybe there's a third category. This feels like a God of the gaps, I've heard people say, where, well, we just can't think of another explanation, so we're defaulting to God. How would you respond to that challenge?
Yeah, I think it's a fallacious challenge because the evidence is pointing in a direction. The evidence is pointing to a conclusion. You can always say, "Oh, what if?" Golly, what if a UFO appeared and changed history in a way that we never really perceived? What if? Well, wait a minute. We don't build our lives on what ifs all the time. In other words, I've got a glass of water here that my wife gave me before our interview. How do I know it wasn't poisoned? It could have been poisoned, but it came in a clean glass. I don't smell anything unusual. My wife has no ill will against me. She has no reason to hurt me. It looks clear. It looks clean. But then I take a step of faith in the same direction the evidence is pointing, and I take a sip. I taste and see that the water is good. And that's what the Bible says, to taste and see that the Lord is good. When the evidence points in a direction, not everything may be possible, but not everything is likely. Not everything is probable. And when we have all of this evidence from science, which changed the entire direction of cosmology, when we have everything from science pointing to this origin, and when we can draw natural conclusions out of that, yeah, you can invent all kinds of other things, but if there's no basis in for raising those issues in a reasonable way, at that point, I got to say, let's hold. You know what? If we come up with some other thing, all science is provisional. All science is provisional. Maybe we change our opinion in the future.
Okay.
Well, I doubt that's going to happen because we're not just inventing God to fill a gap. We are taking a step in the same direction the evidence is pointing. We do that every day of our lives, where we take a step of trust in the same direction the evidence is pointing.
Okay, so you jumped from the Kalam cosmological argument to tasting and seeing that the Lord is good, which is a kind of Jewish and Christian understanding, obviously.
Right.
But the word Kalam is Islamic. Many of the leading defenders are Islamic. So how do you get from this to the God of Christianity? And if it doesn't get us there, what's the point?
Yeah, every argument doesn't make every point.
Okay.
So, I can't use the Kalam argument to prove that Christianity is true in any sense. I can show that the logical attributes of the cause of the universe match up with how the Bible describes the God of Christianity. But that's about as far as I can go. But that's okay because we have other arguments that point in the direction of the truth of Christianity. We have the fine-tuning of the universe, and we have the resurrection of Jesus. That give us further evidence from science and from history that Christianity is true. So I just say, Kalam can take us only so far. Then we have to look at other arguments and other evidence. And so we go from science to history and investigate the resurrection of Jesus. And that gives us Jesus' claim that he was the unique Son of God. And then that claim backed up by his returning from the dead.